Thank you for the introduction. So as you know, I'm Ankit, and I head the Emerging Media Labs at Moonraft. So we are talking about AI or machine intelligence or machine learning at its rudimentary form. As you know, it's something. The sound is a little bit off. It's okay, is it? All right. Yeah, so as you know, it's something that the whole society is actually sort of grappling with, and it's something that is almost like an alien force that is coming to us, and we don't know whether we should actually make contact with them or we should run away. Or do we really have a choice to run away or not to run away, basically, in that sense? And so there's a lot of rhetoric around it, probably. A lot of people are excited about it, a lot of people are nervous about it. So World Bank says that 69% jobs in India are threatened by AI, let's say. And then 69% is a massive number, of course, right? Like, if you look at 69, like it could actually not only cover blue-collar jobs, it could actually cover lawyers or doctors or whatever, basically, in that sense, right? So what does it actually have? And the nervousness is understood, but often it's actually something that's taken out of context. Like if you look at automation, it's not always actually something that actually takes job away. In fact, it actually moves things around, basically. It actually creates a sort of a rupture where society has to all of a sudden sort of adapt to, right? And we have seen that earlier, like when the assembly line was invented, basically, in that sense, right? Because before the assembly line, we kind of forget that there was nothing called a middle class, actually. And most people would actually be either super rich or they would be actually at blue-collar jobs in sense, and they would be working 12 hours a day. What assembly line actually did was actually push them up to actually having a certain income so that a worker could actually work at a factory and own the product that he was building, basically, in some ways. And at the same time, have enough time for his family and everything, basically. So life as we know it is probably invented by automation. So about 2 years back, I started actually pondering about it, like, because I think it's something that we need to actually, it's onus is upon us as designers and as innovators to actually understand what it means for us, basically. And I started actually trying to think of an overly simplistic idea. Let's say in 2020, if there is a designer who's actually trying to do this next big app, and he actually sits down, he's young and he's passionate about what he's doing, he goes about, sketches a wireframe. It's a wireframe which actually is about an app which recommends something. So you have something and you should get. And he creates a box there, and you're supposed to put the recommendation here. Now, what does he do next? The app is done, actually, in that sense, right? Like, he's finished with the app here. Maybe he can actually add an animation there, or you can actually probably put colors over there, but the app is done in that sense. There are no flows available around there. What's happening? Of course, it's an oversimplification, but that's something that we need to probably look into. So this gray box is something that is very mystical in that sense, right? Like, what is happening behind it? It's something that is coming towards us, and it's actually facing us in some ways, basically, right? So it's actually trying to actually stare at us and say that, hey, like, look at me, I'm there. But this is, again, oversimplification, and we have seen this gray box before, basically. If you look at industrial design today, it's actually has a sort of epidemic of actually gray boxes in many ways. And like if you actually look at phones, and if you're trying to create a set-top box or anything, basically, they're all actually boxes. And why they're actually boxes? Because functionality has transferred into an interface inside it, basically. I actually put in a refrigerator there, and I think nobody would notice that also. So, and what happened there was that there was industrial designers who actually had a lot of freedom in terms of form, function, and those things. And when actually computers came in, the whole functionality transferred into the interface, and the interface started multiplexing a lot that way. And the same thing, I think, is what we are actually going to face eventually. It's not to say, because I think UX design actually became a major industry after that. So it's not that like it took away jobs, and it actually shifted somewhere, basically. And it's going to do it again, basically, because that gray box is staring at us, right? But that's oversimplification. Again, there are nuances to what that gray box in some ways, right? Because you can actually give persona to an AI, some ways. You can make it into a Robocop, or you can make it into a friendly robot, or a friendly persona, or it could be a butler, basically, which actually understands what you're doing. And there are nuances in, you see the new products that are coming in, right? So like, look at Alexa, basically. Whenever you say Echo, whenever you say Alexa to it, it wakes up, the light turns, and actually looks at you, as if it's a person looking at you. Why is it a light and not an eye, or a person, or a mouth, or something like that, basically? That's all the design decisions that we actually have to take, or design restraints that we have to take, basically, to actually be able to do that. And they all actually land in somewhere on the infamous uncanny valley, basically, right, where you actually plot a curve towards how familiar we are to that system, and how much we are actually going to like it in some ways, right? So if you look at a likeness of human likeness, if a system does not look like us, we have a neutral reaction to it. But as it starts looking better to us, or more like a live person or live being, it actually raises up. But all of a sudden, there's a huge dip in between, basically. And so most of the AI-based products try to actually be here, because after that, the dip, the valley that comes in is a very steep valley to come up. And a lot of times, products would try to be there, basically, in center, before they actually slide in. So sometimes you see Siri going down completely, because it's trying to be at that peak, at the peak that is there, basically. So these things are actually there. So it's a very rich thing. But the problem is, it's all behind, sorry, not going forward. Yeah, okay. And for example, IBO was actually a big victim of the uncanny valley, where you actually have a dog, which is actually a robotic dog, but you have an expectation of a live dog from it. You actually want it to, okay, it can actually, if you throw a stick, it might probably pick it up, or it actually come back, or if you actually have let's say, if you say sit down, it will probably sit down, but it won't pee on the floor, for example, right? So, and that kind of creates a reaction to it, and people actually started, it creates a disappointment. On other end, something like Paro is sort of a cousin of IBO, and it's a seal. And not many of us are actually familiar with seal, so we are actually more open to it, let's say, right? And we are okay to actually interpret what kind of actions it will do, and so we are more amenable to it. So it can actually act cute and be there, and it's a therapeutic robot which actually still exists even after 10 years, helping kids around, basically. So there's a lot of restraint that companies actually are taking. Like, for example, if you look at Google Pixel, for example, it's a new phone that's coming in, and a lot of people actually criticize the industrial design of it. It has a quirky sort of box in it, and why is it, basically? They're actually trying to understand themselves, saying that, okay, I'm here, I'm sort of flaunted, don't interpret me too harsh, but I will actually help you out, you will have fun with me. And so it's a sort of a openness that you create, and that's why they actually try to put fabric on those things. So we are at a place where computers have to, again, sound very familiar in some ways, basically. Just the way iMac was one time Bondi blue in color so that people would pick it up. But all those things that we are talking about, where it actually stands in an uncanny valley, all those kind of things are actually behind the big gray box that we look at. And we have to actually peek and push that box in some ways, basically. But what is happening is that our design community actually has been in a very good place where we have sociology, marketing, philosophy, anthropology, and all those kind of sub-places, and we actually culminate them into a single place. But what is happening is they're all going behind that box, basically. So it is, for us, very important that all those decisions, we have to poke that box again, basically, right? So the question comes in, like, is AI good without design? I personally think that there are a lot to be done. There's a lot of things that actually design can do for AI in some ways. And a lot of times the interfaces that actually come in, they not always are actually sort of recipient to human tendencies in many ways. Like, for example, if I'm actually looking at boxer shorts doesn't mean I'm actually someone who's obsessed with boxer shorts and I should actually be bombarded by those kind of things. It's not to say that those algorithms are very, very weak in many ways. They are probably marvels of maths. The content filtering and all those kinds of collaborative filtering algorithms are actually something like marvel of mathematics, basically. So what is missing there is actually the whole humanistic approach towards how humans are. And I think there is something that we need to probably work with technology in some way so that we can actually get that optimum state, basically. So the box that we are talking about is not actually a homogeneous box, actually, right? It actually has a lot of small things that make it into one thing. The recommendation that comes to you is not because of just one system which actually works together. It looks like that from outside, but there are pipes and complex networks which actually make it together, and there are features, basically, right? Like X1, X2, XY, and then they actually pull out Y. But what is that X1, XY? They're actually human features, like whether someone likes something, and so what kind of features are important in a system are actually design decision at times. They actually drive what will come out of the system. So I think the design has to be there. But the problem is, there's a gatekeeper, actually. From what is actually designers, stopping designers to actually go into that zone is like complex mathematics, basically. And it's very, very scary at the beginning, basically. But it's something that I think our design community actually has to probably stare into in some ways. Because if you look at the earliest designers of Apple II and Apple I, for example, when they had to do graphics on the thing, they actually had to code those graphics into it. And there's some history there in that way. I'll take my own example. I'm not a person who actually is from tech background. I started my career as a communication designer. But like over 10 years, I've started writing restricted ball spin machines and all those kind of things. Not just because actually I find that intriguing, but it's something that I feel is very urgent in many ways, basically. I actually revolted against that in 12th standard against my dad to actually say, no, Dad, I don't want to go there. But I actually went through last 2 years to actually be able to get into this space just because I think there is an urgency there. And I'll give you an example because it actually, once you go through that, it changes your world in many ways, basically. I was very fortunate to have a son about a year back, and it was all hunky-dory nice till, come on. Yeah. The reality kicks in, basically, and you actually start feeling, oh my God, what am I getting into? Now, I was recording all the data from my son, so I started actually writing an app saying that, can it actually predict a data model to tell me what to do next in some ways, basically, right? It worked for 15 days at least, but after that, I think it was, he changed. You can't actually beat that. So the idea is that once you actually cross the chasm of actually this whole intimidating machine that we are looking at, design becomes oversimplified and very, very existential in many ways. You actually stop looking at the bells and whistles and all the kind of smoke and mirror and gimmicks, and you start looking at very core existential definition of things, like what is design, let's say, right, and it's problem solving, and you'll have to get deep into those things. And, sorry, yeah, so, is there? And where I actually have come to actually, where I think design can actually really, really help in machine learning and in AI is where we have to actually mimic human intuition in some ways, basically, right? And that's where our domain has been till now, like how do actually humans make decisions? And those kind of things are something that are very, very things that we are used to doing it. And I think design is something that probably can help there. So we are actually doing something at our lab where we are trying to actually just ask this question, basically. And we are actually probably asking the most blasphemous question, saying that can computers design, actually? And can computers create things like taste, or how can they actually develop a knack of things, basically, or how they can actually get into these kind of things, basically. And if you look at it, computers can be very good at it, basically, right? Like, lateral thinking is very, very difficult for human beings. We have to obviously actually learn to it. For computers, is something trivial in that sense, basically, right? Or abstraction is often very trivial to computers. So it's something that we are actually really, really poking into and saying that thing. And while we are doing that, that's a longer, grander vision. We are also looking at smaller things, like, for example, can we actually test it out in a smaller space? Like, if we are actually looking at fashion or something like that, where we can actually see whether we can actually create a system where it can not only be reactive, but be predictive about taste, for example, right? Okay. And if you look at it, computers are getting better at learning context. For example, there's this algorithm where if you actually put in an image to it, it will try to detect what it is. And it's not just what it is, the context of it. For example, if you show it a picture of a dog, it just does not detect that it's a dog, but that it's a dog jumping on a blue bar, for example, right? They're getting very good at actually generating things. For example, music, for example. It will listen to at multiple pieces of music and learn and actually generate their own kind of music. So this is an AI do it, if you guys have figured out, where a user can actually play something and then it actually will react with music back. And it will actually keep on doing it forever, generatively, continuously, basically. Or even if you look at a stylistic implementation, I think you guys have actually seen Prisma, and it's pretty popular by now, but it had its roots in Germany, so where they can actually have videos where you can actually apply stylistic transfers, for example. So they can actually start looking at themes and probably applying it there also. And the most uncanny one was the Move 37 in AlphaGo competition, where in the second match, where AlphaGo was actually competing with Lucidol, and it made a move which was super surprising for people. In fact, like in the world, there were only one entity which actually was confident about what it was doing, and that was AlphaGo. Not even the team actually thought that it was a good thing that they were doing. And it's something that was so surprising that Lucidol actually got up, didn't understand what he's doing, walked out of things, basically, walked out of a room for a while for a cup of water. And at this moment, I actually kind of realized that, okay, computers can actually teach us some things that are uncanny in some ways, basically. They can actually probably teach humanity something, basically, that way. And computers are moving very, very fast, in fact. In 2015, we had computers where they could generate very, very pattern-like things. For example, if you give it ant, and it will actually generate pattern of ants, but it's not really, really ant. But in 2016, I'm already there, okay. 2016, as you can see, the results are so much better. And it will actually generate a different image every time, basically, that way. So we are actually looking at that, but where we actually get stuck is, again, at human intuition, basically. How do you actually decode that human intuition, basically? And as I said, design at AI, in AI is actually very, very existential. So when you actually look at that, so if we actually ask a designer, how do you actually design something, he will have a process that he will actually extrapolate. Maybe I say I open a book of Dieter-Rams and learn all the principles first, and then I actually go and touch design, basically. But that's maybe not true. And sometimes in design research, that could actually help you out. The serendipity could actually help you out. But in AI, it really, really hurts, basically, because there's truth in machine learning. So we actually got stuck in there, and we were actually wondering what to do. I'm a person who actually reads a lot of science fiction from school days, and I actually read this book when I was a kid called Ender's Game. And it's a book about alien invasion. The whole humanity is actually invaded by aliens, basically, and they don't know what to do. What they do is actually they give kids some games to play, and they are war games, and when they are playing, they win it. Eventually, they realize those simulations were actually something that were actually happening with real armies, and they actually defeat the whole world, basically. And I think that's something that we can actually take on from. So what we did was we actually started building design games, basically, small puzzles where people actually place things to actually decode things for them. So give people a game where they can actually build things, and that's how you actually can actually mine out what they actually think about facility. And the system actually varies the problems at different perspectives to be able to figure out, okay, getting like the whole space. And what we do there is actually take that whole thing and actually visualize it, and then designers can actually pick up strains from those clusters about what those things were, and try to actually test them out in the system, basically, whether that generates a result or not. And that is something that we, so that's where the designer comes in, basically, in that way. And so the biggest insight that we actually found out during this whole process is that we actually have to humble down in the age of AI in some ways and actually have to give users a credit. In some ways, the users are the new designers in many ways, right? Because they're actually designing their whole app or whatever system that they're using by actually giving their own data in some ways. And every user is actually a designer in that way. And it's a whole loop between the feedback and then the user giving feedback and then it going around and they actually design their own life, basically, right? And this is very, very evident also. Like if you guys are aware of Tay, it was a chatbot released by Microsoft, and it was supposed to actually be like a teenager in some ways, and within an hour, it actually turned into a neo-Nazi racist, basically, because people kept on saying mean things to it just to test out what it says, in fact, that way. And they had to shut it down and put it down, basically. So AI is in many ways actually a reflection of humanity in many ways, right? And so we have to actually, oh my gosh, okay. Can you press the play button there? Sorry. Okay. Is there. So we have to actually move back from the system and be very honest with what users are actually interacting with them and use them as a space and actually work like orchestrators. And if you look at what we have to do there is actually still be a system thinker. We still have to actually have those ethnographic methods, but it's just that it's becoming more purer. But we have to actually jump that gap. And by having designers in our actually team there, we actually really created a humanistic approach there, basically. So earlier we were starting with a system where you actually just had the data and it was a closed system. But having designers, we actually had insight that this tacit knowledge is very, very important for someone to actually make a taste, for example, right? Like I do not just make taste by actually just looking at fashion images or by good design, basically. I'm inspired by the world around me, basically. So we started looking at internet just because of that, basically, and we started a whole different program just to tackle that thing. So when you have designers on board, it actually creates that kind of pull, basically. But they have to, oh man, what's happening? What did happen? Yeah. Oh, it's back. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's the role of design and technology in some ways. Basically, design actually provides introspection to technology, and technology on the way back actually provocates even. And that's a symbiosis that I think we need to probably get into. But for that, I think we have to beat the gray box. And we have to actually start saying that, okay, we are not just owners of that, but we have some kind of understanding. And for that, we need to probably change our design education and actually make more designer aware of machine learning. It's hard, but it's not that difficult. Once you actually take it, it's very, very rewarding. And to say that there's so much that we can do there, basically, right? We are a country where we have massive amount of population and very, very scarce resources, basically. And AI could actually really help you out there, basically. If you look at farmers, for example, they are looking for expert guidance, but they are too far away from the cities there. Students are actually worried about what to do there in the career, and the guidance counselors are very rare in the thing. AI could actually bridge those kind of things, like how Aditya said, smart cities in the morning, basically. So, yeah, thank you. I would take some questions if there are any. Yeah. You can tell me, and I can probably repeat it back.
The buzzwords today in technology that common people like us are hearing are AI and AR. While AR to me is, this is not my terminology, but besides the fun aspects and entertainment aspects such as Pokemon, I know that AR has a role to play in augmenting, life. And AI also has a huge role to play in terms of assistance, by understanding what human needs, etc. Is there a way that they are combining and working together?
Yeah, I think since you said AR is actually something where you actually want to have something relevant to the world around you, AI is what you actually will bring it to you, basically, right? Because if I'm actually looking at, what am I looking at, first of all, is something that you actually need to be figuring it out. And then at the other level, you have to figure out whether it's relevant to me, for example, right? Because screen space is very limited in this, right? I can't keep on bombarding you with AR all the time, basically, right? You have to actually give very, very specific insights into what the person is interested into. And that's very, very important. So I think both of them have to work together.
My name is Sachin. I just wanted to ask you, as a designer, right, when you are going to communicate with a technocrat, right, because we are talking about technology here, what are the challenges you face and how do you overcome them? It's like, let's say, when you talk to a technology or a technocrat, he said that he will be only concerned about the technology, maths, algorithms, limitations of that and all. And you wanted to have a different field, right? You are saying about the human, right? Human intuition. So how do you bridge that gap? If you can give some kind of example wherein you use this.
I think the empathy is very, very important between two different worlds, basically. Technology needs to understand design to some extent, and I think designers need to be able to make themselves, and it's their role to actually make themselves aware of technology in some way so that they can actually talk to them in some certain terms, basically. And that collaboration is something that is very, very important there. Like if you actually work and you actually put a team where designers and technologists actually work together, that thing actually, and when they know that they can actually work in hand, is something very important there, basically. And it works both ways, basically. I think if we actually expect technology to understand design, I think we have to make designers actually understand a bit of more technology.
Hi. If you look at artificial intelligence, it is still not being accepted by the human, There is a lot of hesitance from the human being, from the user side. They said, you look at Siri. The Siri starts understanding you. It starts responding to you. The moment she says that, oh, good morning to you, Neha. Would you like to have a coffee? And you said, oh, I never said that I like coffee, but how do you know about it? So it's like you don't want to have that kind of intelligence from the technology side, and yet you want to bring that. So how are you going to, bridge that gap?
I didn't get your question, actually.
So for example, I said, like there is a lot of hesitant around the users of using this kind of, AI in the system or it's anywhere. So do you think that gap will reduce in future, or it's going to be, how are you going to make it as, as friendly as possible?
In fact, that's what the chasm I was talking about, basically, in that sense, right? Like, it's very, very hard for a technology to actually be that confident that I'm a human being and actually be proved to that human being. And that's why Siri fails at times, basically, because of it's trying to push itself way too close to the human being. And it'll take some time, but I think at certain places, I think it's actually really, really taking fast. But as the curve is very, very steep, a lot of technology products will actually hold back till they are really, really confident about that they can actually push and actually be there, basically. And it's a risky proposition again, right? Like the reward is not that high, maybe.